On the blackest nights we sail through fog. Two voices echo from the salty bog. With tales of movies and actors bold. Host Josh and Jillian, their stories unfold. Hold fast the wheel, listen to Jive, the Blank Podcast where legends vibe. From silver screens to haunted dreams, in Josh and Jillian's twisted schemes. Brought to you by Anchor Bay Entertainment. Now here's your hosts, Josh and Jillian. Yeah!
That's the lightest green. All right. And 1, 3, 2, 1, and hello. Hey, everyone, and Jillian.
You're going to talk to the audience? You're going to talk to me first?
I figured I could do both.
Yeah.
But I think the audience likes it when we talk to each other because they don't want to be talked to because we're not interacting with them.
Yeah, sure. Welcome, everyone, to The Plank, the new podcast by Anchor Bay Entertainment. Josh, introduce yourself.
I think you just did.
Okay,
I'm Josh.
Do it more.
Jillian, I think I will. My name is Josh Wagner, and I am a podcaster, I guess. Now, I guess I'm doing it. I'm doing the thing.
What were you before?
A filmmaker? Well, I'm definitely still a filmmaker. That's actually how we met.
That is how we met. Yeah.
Remember? You want to tell people how we met?
Yeah, I do. I am Jillian Lee Garner. I am an actor and podcaster here in Los Angeles. And I was connected with Josh because he was my director on a movie called Turning Point.
How did he even know you were here?
The bag.
What bag?
The bag, the duffel bag, the bag, my bag.
You brought that here? You brought the bag with your fucking name on it here? Are you a fucking idiot?
It's my lucky bag.
Stop saying that! Stop! You're not 10 years old. How could you be so fucking stupid? How could I be so fucking stupid? They have a
Turning
daughter.
Point. I remember Turning Point.
Oh, who could forget? Probably most people, since it hasn't gone out, and it might never ever.
It will have its day.
Sure.
We'll make sure that it has its day. So Turning Point was a movie that I directed, and Thomas Zambek and Brian Katz produced, by the way, those names we'll be mentioning a lot on this podcast. Mm-hmm. If you don't know who they are, you will. They are the founders and the owners of the new rendition of Anchor Bay. So every time we talk about them or mention their names, you have a drink.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't an angel get its wings too?
Exactly.
Wait, who's that?
Oh,
we haven't even introduced this guy yet, and he's chiming in over here.
Oh my gosh!
All right, hold on a second, fella.
All
we got to talk about Anchor. We got to finish Anchor Bay. All right, no, I'm just
keeping my mouth shut.
You have to stop moving.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not so much me as it's the back of this chair.
I know.
So Turning Point, it's a movie that we made 3 years ago that we've been pushing for its release.
Yes.
And the distributors, they've given us every reason in the book as to why it hasn't been released, from like legal issues to not having the deliveries.
What book?
What book? What?
You said give me every reason in the book. What book?
You know, the book.
The book.
The book.
Oh, right.
The big book.
The book.
Anyway.
How foolish of me.
It's the burn book
the
for Mean Girls.
The good book. It's like the bad book.
Yeah. But anyway,
Sure.
we were connected by Brian and Tom because they were the producers of that film. And they have now acquired Anchor Bay Entertainment and wanted to start a little podcast to promote past films, future films, and asked us because we're so entertaining and adorable.
Yeah, we're gregarious, we're funny.
Ooh,
we're
gregarious.
We're personable, and
Super.
they just are. Our personalities just shine so much. They're like, you two. We're not even going to ask anybody else. You two have to do it.
They're like, you have to.
Here's a bunch of money.
Hygienic.
Yeah, here's
you're
so
both,
much money.
Both hygienic.
We're both. Well,
I'm
I don't know
clean.
about that.
Yeah.
Are you hygienic?
I
shower like.
smell me. Don't smell me. Well, anyway, we are really excited to be doing this podcast. We're going to be talking a lot about films, a lot of interviews with directors, producers, actors, writers, everyone to do with these Anchor Bay Entertainment films that we will be highlighting through this podcast. So really excited for you guys to be joining us. And we're really excited to have our first inaugural guest, Michael Kallio. Thank you so much for being here with The Plank. We are so excited to have you.
All right,
Thanks for
Mike.
having me. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're a Michigan boy like our producers, Tom and Brian. How long have you been out here in LA?
20 years.
20 years.
Since 2004. End of
20
April
years.
2004.
Wow. So let's talk about
That's math.
good math. Really
Thank you.
good math.
I'm not good at math.
Did you do that in your head?
No, I had to use
Use your
every finger
fingers.
and toe.
Yeah.
Other digits I'm not going to mention.
Okay, don't.
Wow.
Cool.
20 years and 4 months.
Yes.
I was doing that math as you guys were talking.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Let's
for
talk
you.
about let's
tell
talk
us-
about little Michael.
Tell us about the Michigan Connects. Tell us about your life.
Little Michael.
Tell us about little Michael. Yeah,
I
he
was
growing up in
born at an
Michigan.
early age.
An early age of 0.
Yes. Raised by mom and grandma.
Were they artists, or is anyone in the family in the industry, or
No.
no?
No. I had
Think
to,
about
had to
that.
double check.
You're like, am I a Nepo baby? No. Mhm.
But they are the cause of it
Okay.
in a weird way. Raised by mom and grandma most of my young life. We would go to the movies. My mom worked for the phone company. She worked for Michigan Bell before it changed into several other companies' names, including AT&T. But she would get 3 weeks off for summer, and she would get 3 weeks off for Christmas time. And we had a tendency to have movie marathons where we would get up early, either have breakfast at home or go out, and we would go to a mall, a Cineplex, and we'd pick 3, 4, 5 movies, and we'd do a movie marathon. So
Wow.
we'd go to 2 or 3 movies. We'd get lunch. We'd go to two or 3 other movies, or whatever it was. Between 4 and 5 movies a day. The big place we used to go to was the Fairlane Town Center, because they had a pretty big Cineplex there, and we'd see 4 or 5 movies a day.
Wow.
Possibly have dinner out as well, or go home and have dinner. But my love for film started with my mom. She took me to see Bambi when I was 3, and I stood the entire time.
Wow.
I probably pissed off the young couple that was trying to make out during it, because I was directly behind them, standing there going, "What's happening? What's going on?"
Mom's dead.
Yeah.
That was, by the way, that's my first memory of being at the movies, Bambi.
Bambi.
You know who else's first movie that was? Harrison Ford's.
No way.
Not that he told me that personally, but I have seen interviews where he said that Bambi was the first movie.
You're
And
like,
we're
oh my God,
all-
me and Harrison Ford are the same person.
And we're all the different ages. Was that movie just in the theater for like
forever.
40 years or what?
Well, they re-released it a bunch of
Yeah.
times, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Wow.
sure there's people now who are like, oh, Jaws was my first movie that I saw in the theater during its whatever,
Do you
40-year release.
Do you remember your mom's favorite movie?
I remember a movie she watched. She wasn't supposed to. Her friends told her not to watch the movie while she was pregnant with me.
Oh, what?
The 1962 Haunting.
Oh.
I thought you were going to say Rosemary's Baby.
That
Did
would
she
probably be one
watch
to
it?
avoid too. Oh yeah, she didn't care. She was.
While she was pregnant with you?
Yeah.
Maybe that's
what happened.
maybe some of that love for a horror film creeped into
But-
the umbilical cord.
But he didn't always love horror movies.
That's true. You didn't.
No, it started when I was 15.
Wow.
The sickness started then.
What? Take us back. What was the day that changed your life?
I was at a birthday party for a friend of mine. I'll just say his name is Mark, because it was. And
Shout out, Mark.
And he kind of forced my hand into staying at his birthday party, because his idea was, we're gonna have cake and ice cream, then we're gonna go down in the basement and watch Evil Dead. And I was like, the fuck I am.
You're like, that's not for me. Thank you.
Yeah, because I wasn't a fan of horror movies that were scary. I was a fan of, the tragic monsters like the Universal monsters and Edgar Allan Poe, Vincent Price, Roger Corman movies, where the monsters were more tragic than monstrous, and they were loners, and you felt for them. And I was that kid. I was a loner kid. I made Super 8 movies where people were playing football and being jocks and cool.
Yeah.
I was doing I was reenacting Indiana Jones and making Indiana Jones movies and making up my own characters because I couldn't afford James Bond type stunts. So I made up Drake Stevenson, a one-man army. That's one of my characters that I made a Super 8 film out of. And
tell us a little bit about Drake.
Drake was me in a bad members only jacket. I was the only member.
Member only.
Member only. But Mark said we're going to watch Evil Dead, and that this particular girl I liked.
It's always a girl.
Always a girl. Dames. But apparently she liked me, and so I stuck around, and that's when the switch was flipped. Because all of a sudden, I became obsessed with horror movies because of Evil Dead. Thinking I was going to be freaked out, I was not prepared for the incredible laughter that started to come out of my being. Watching all of it, because it was demonic possession. I was raised Catholic. That stuff freaked me out.
Yeah.
So did you think the laughter was from nerves? Or did you think it was funny? Because part 2 is funny.
Yes.
Speaking of what the shirt you're wearing.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but part 2 is intentionally funny. But what did you find funny about Evil Dead 1? If you're afraid,
part 1 was unintentionally funny.
What? Because of a tree branch raped a girl?
Spoiler alert.
If anyone on the planet who hasn't seen Evil Dead, sorry.
Sorry.
The thing with Evil Dead was, I think they were trying to make a serious horror film, and camp seeped in. Whether it was just the fact that it was their first movie or whatever, but it ended up working. It ended up working so well. I don't know, honestly. I go back and forth. Evil Dead 2 is usually my favorite one.
Evil Dead 2 is good, yeah.
But I love the first one just as much.
So you see it, and
and the girl is death gripping me like I'm gonna save her.
And you're like, this is awesome.
Yeah, that's where you realize that you're the hero. You become a hero. A girl's gripping your arm, and
I would have used her as a shield if a Deadeye popped out of the TV or whatever. One of these kids were like, after ice cream started trying to kill us, I'd be like,
take her.
Do what you want with the girl, but leave me alone.
So then that just opened Pandora's box.
It did, because the next day I was like, I have to rent all the classics. I have to go buy Fangoria magazine. And I was already a fan of like Starlog and all the genre magazines. Cinemagic, which was a do-it-yourself Super 8 16mm film magazine. I mean, I read about horror and learned how to make things like masks and that, but I was never like the guy who was like going to make horror movies.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
What were the first movies that you rented?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Evil Dead again, Return of the Living Dead.
Loved it.
What was Return of the Living Dead out? I think Return of the Living Dead had come out in the theaters actually. But like I started going to see movies like House and Aliens, and I rented Alien because I had never seen it.
Yeah.
Wait, Alien or Aliens? Which one you like better?
Oh man, they're two different movies.
Well, one's a horror, one's not, in my opinion.
Agreed.
One's
an action movie, but it has horror overtones.
Yeah, it's kind of like Evil Dead 1 and 2. One's a horror, one's kind of a comedy.
Yeah.
Alien versus Aliens. Alien is more of a horror, I think.
Oh, it's definitely it's a suspense movie. It's a Hitchcock movie in space. Yeah.
So you see Evil Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and all the classics, and in Evil Dead, Bruce Campbell's in that film.
He is?
And
yes.
he famously produced your first film, Hatred of a Minute.
Famously.
Famously. Yeah. Now that I'm saying that it's famous, it was famously.
Michael, you scared the hell out of me.
Thy soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone, not one of all the crowds to pry into thine hour of secrecy.
Yeah, spirits of the dead bite home. What's your point?
You look like you've seen a ghost.
I'm all right.
How's the screenplay coming, Eric?
Look, you don't have to follow me around. I'm fine, okay?
I was just making small talk. an autopsy transcriber, and a screenwriter. You probably get some pretty twisted ideas.
Keeps my imagination going.
And Gunnar, who is Leatherface,
Gunnar Hansen, yeah.
Gunnar Hansen from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is one of the stars of that film.
Yes.
So you, having never seen a horror film, see the classics, and you go, I got to work with these guys. And you do for your first film ever. How did that come about? How did you get connected with them?
They lost a bet. No.
Yeah, I bet. They lost a round of golf.
That's right. I wrote Bruce. I was dating a girl who used to babysit Bruce's daughter, Rebecca, when she was first born. And she had a connection, and she wasn't an actress herself, but she wanted to be a producer, and we were seeing each other, and she was like, I'm going to produce your first movie. I have connections with Bruce Campbell, yeah.
And Bruce is from Michigan.
Bruce is from Michigan. So we went to a Fangoria convention in Chicago, and she introduced me to him and then just went off. So I was hanging out with a couple of convention friends because I had started to going to more horror conventions and had made some friends. And so I was just hanging out with them, kind of bummed that I wasn't included in their dinner. And he agreed to guide us. But then we broke up. Me and this girl split up. And
Broke up with the babysitter.
yeah. And I thought, well, that's done. And I was going through a notebook that she had written some notes in about the movie, and his P.O. box was in it. So I wrote him a letter.
Nice.
Which basically said, Dear Bruce, I am 20 years old. We met briefly at a Fango convention in Chicago through, I'm not going to mention her name because she's the devil.
Still.
I know, right?
Still holding on to that.
No,
breakup.
it's long gone, but she is the devil.
No one's bitter.
It's not bitterness, it's fact.
You know, hey, two things can be true.
And science. That's true. Two things can be true. But I wrote him a letter, and he responded. He actually called me on the phone about 2 weeks later while I was rushing to a meeting with a lawyer with VCR and TV and some of my Super 8 shorts on a VHS tape to prove to this lawyer that we know what we're doing, because I had a producing partner at the time, another producing partner at the time, and we were going to see if he would give us seed money to rent it makes no sense now, but to hire an entertainment lawyer to put together our first limited partnership so we could legally raise money for our first movie. And we were running late, and my grandmother, who answered the phone, said, there's a guy on the phone for you. I think you should talk to him. And I was like, Grandma, we're running late. We have to be at this meeting.
Shut up, Grandma.
Yeah, shut up, Grandma. Stupid jerk.
Yeah.
And she said, it's Bruce Campbell. And I didn't believe her. And I ran into the house, and I picked up the phone. And sure as shit, hey, this is Bruce Campbell. Is this Mike? And I dropped the phone. Because I was a fanboy. Yeah. I flipped out. I was a fanboy before I knew him.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not going to give you money. I don't know people who have money because I'm looking for money for my own projects. And I got that.
Classic.
But he did say he would mentor me, or as he liked to say, torment. Be my tormentor.
Tormentor. Nice.
I love that.
And yeah, the rest is history. I kind of dug my claws in him. And
Wow.
now I'm cutting his recent movie.
That's
Like,
so cool.
I should be there now cutting. But
I love stories like that. My dad's always like, reach out, do anything. Because
never
the
know.
worst thing that could possibly happen is they say no.
Yeah.
That's it.
They tell you to screw off.
Yeah.
Look what look it like, but you know, this was the 80s, right?
It was actually 1990.
Because
Listen,
Hatred of a Minute came out
1990
in
was still
2002, 2003?
What was that?
Hatred of a Minute came out in 2000.
2003.
But my point is he, first of all, sent Bruce Campbell a letter in the mail. Snail mail.
Yep. Old school.
And he's on his way to physically meet with a lawyer with all these documents, these videos, and that he can prove that he is capable of forming an LLC to make a movie. These things, the groundwork that you used to have to do. Right now, we could probably, well, I know you can, but you could probably email Bruce Campbell and then you can just form an LLC. Like go to a lawyer, call a lawyer and be like, hey, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Look at this. Check this out. What I made on YouTube or whatever, if they need to. But this is that just my point is the tenacity that because of the lack of resources and the lack of technology back then versus what it is now. But look,
we literally had a small TV and a VCR that we were taking with us to this meeting, which is ridiculous.
It's brilliant.
I think of it now and I'm like, I could have just shown him on my phone.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, that didn't exist then.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I'm thinking about all the divine timing of it.
Too, yeah.
You happen to be dating this girl who happened to be the babysitter, and like there happened to be this convention going on in Chicago.
That's
like
how it started.
what if you were at that meeting with the lawyer when Bruce called and you weren't able to get on the phone? Like who knows if he would have called back, Like just the timing of it is it's really serendipitous.
And that serendipity kept happening throughout my career.
Talk about how you got connected with Gunnar.
Again, another convention. So not only did I start loving horror movies, the first movie I worked on was a horror movie shot in Pontiac, Michigan at the time it was called Them. It was released as Hellmaster, starring John Saxon, who during the movie, I was just a PA on it, but I ended up doing a bunch of art stuff for it, and I ended up being John Saxon's stand-in.
Wow.
His body double.
Rest in peace.
Because we were the same height, apparently.
How tall are you?
What was that?
How tall are you?
I'm 5'10" and a half. But I don't know if I was
that half is important.
That half is
well,
important.
I'm also 52 and a half.
We love.
I'm not going to be 53 ever.
No.
I'm going to always be 52 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I'm this many.
Mm-hmm.
5'2".
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing special effects work for a company called Gags and Games. And if anyone from Michigan knows Gags and Games, it might be Tom or Brian.
It's the three other people.
The funny story is they were, I believe they were the first Halloween store that started doing, they were open all year. They sold gags, fake dog poo and trick gum. They sold Dungeons and Dragons stuff, role-playing game stuff.
I love Dungeons and Dragons.
But then you're cool.
We knew this.
They rented costumes. They had an adult section. I mean, it was like a weird novelty. It was what's the famous
Spirit?
No, it's before Spirit. What's the famous novelty store that I want
Oz?
to go? Yes.
Love Oz.
It was before that.
Oh,
I think Gags and Games was the first store to start opening. Like during Halloween was their big season because they'd rent costumes and we get inventory for masks and things, makeup, and all the Halloween accoutrement. And they started opening satellite stores around Michigan and in the regional Midwest, which is, I think, where Spirit got it from, if I'm not mistaken. But they used to make their own line of masks and, shrunken heads and cut off heads and, props, Halloween props and things like that. And so I got into the special effects world because of working on that movie. Because those were the first people I gravitated towards, the artists. And I ended up working for the company and started making masks and things. And we went to a show in Dearborn, Michigan, and Gunnar was there. And he was by himself. I was sitting at my table. He was sitting at his. And I looked at my boss and I said, I'm going to go talk to Gunnar Hansen. And we had an hour-long conversation about the door slamming.
The
infamous,
we talked about that before you came in.
The infamous hammer kill. And with, I believe that was Bill Vale.
Bill Vale.
Yeah, Bill Vale. And we had an hour-long conversation. And then I said, I've been working on a script. I've been thinking of you as far as like playing the main bad guy. Because of Gags and Games, I knew Gary Jones, who was another effects guy who worked on Evil Dead 2 and a bunch of Michigan-made movies. He had mentioned that he had Gunnar attached to a script that he wrote. And I thought, well, I could do that too. So I just walked up to Gunnar and said, would you be interested in being in this weird little movie that we're trying to put together? And he was like, send me the script. He sent me his P.O. box. He signed me a photo and he gave me his number. And we started communicating like pals.
What else had you seen him in besides Texas at that point?
That's it.
Oh, really?
I mean, he really hadn't done anything
But
aside from...
Okay.
Well, I know he did a movie called Demon Lover, but he's only in it briefly, and he didn't like the experience. Okay. I know very little. All I know is that there's a documentary called Demon Lover Diaries that Gunnar refused to be in because he had such a terrible time working on the movie.
That documentary's fucking awesome.
It's pretty brutal.
It's like Hearts of Dark. It's like Hearts of Darkness.
It's definitely something every filmmaker should see, just to make sure that they really want to do this, because it's such a hard business.
It's dark.
That's such good advice.
Yeah,
it's dark.
Wow. When Gunnar read the script, let's talk about Hatred of a Minute for a second.
Sure,
for a minute.
When when Gunnar got the script, was it kind of, I'm trying to think of the word, because Leatherface comes from an abused father, and like that's what triggers his serial killerness. And in Hatred of a Minute, your character Eric comes from an abused father, and that's what kind of triggers his serial killerness.
You've done your homework, Jillian.
Oh yeah, of course I have. Was
Actually,
he like, oh, I get to kind of play the opposite role of what I got famous for?
Hatred of a Minute was not my first screenplay.
Oh.
I had been writing a script called Southern Hospitality, which Bruce Campbell dubbed Deliverance with Chicks, which I appreciate.
Okay. That's a loaded, I don't even know where to go with that.
It was a story of three friends, college buddies, going to spring break. They break down in Romero, Georgia.
Oh,
get it?
George Romero.
Yeah,
Got
you did
it.
get it.
Oh.
I'm smart.
And they enter this bar that is a biker bar, and they're slightly accosted until the sheriff shows up and says, leave these boys alone. They'll get their car fixed. They'll be on their way. The barmaid and the bartender, two females, take these guys in because there's really no place for them to stay. They're drugged. They wake up in these weird torture devices in this weird room. And they realize that these girls want to get married. And they'll do anything to get married. And when they escape, the girls call on their father, who also happens to be the sheriff. So that was the original idea. And Gunnar was going to play the sheriff.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
And he
did you also drop Bruce Campbell's name? You had to have dropped Bruce Campbell's name at that
I
point.
try and drop Bruce Campbell's name as often as I can.
Okay.
Especially back in the day.
But did
Dropping
Gunnar,
it like landmines.
did Gunnar know who Bruce Campbell was? Because even though he was because he was kind of an intellectual dude, not really like a horror guy.
Well,
like
but he was at that
guy.
time he was doing cons, so Bruce and Gunnar would run into each other doing conventions.
Okay.
So he knew Gunnar was interested just because of the script, but he also knew Bruce was involved in helping at the time, just mentoring me. And the project fell apart. I had some shady partners, unfortunately.
Can you go into that at all? I mean,
you know what? It's
not any names or anything. But
no, but
just the
what
process,
else?
because it's interesting for the audience to hear like how that.
What
can
I'll
fall
say
through.
is there was a lot of backstabbing going on.
In the film business?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. isn't it?
What?
But the funny thing is, we weren't in the film business. Everyone was all, we're going to make movies. But
And you're still in Michigan.
Well,
yeah. And we're in Michigan. And it's like, the backstabbing was unnecessary. It was petty. And
a bunch of Michigan backstabbers.
Yeah, well, water under the bridge, water over the bridge, 2 tears in a bucket, fuck it. That's ancient history.
You want to waterboard them under the bridge?
Then I did, yes. But,
Make them walk the plank.
The plank. But there should be a bell or something.
Yeah. We'll get a bell.
We'll put one in post.
But
Wait, like a bell sound? You mean like a?
No, we'll
you
get
mean
a
like
bell.
this?
We'll get a.
Yes.
I got the sound effect for you. I'll send it to you.
Okay, great.
A Dropbox.
I need a good bell sound effect.
So yeah, that was it's ancient history. What I can say is this: I'm the only one making movies, and
What are those people doing?
I win. Not making movies.
Wait, so Hatred of an Eight? Hatred, the Hateful Eight.
Hatred of a Minute. Oh yeah, your famous film Hateful Eight.
The Hateful Eight.
Hating every minute, as I used to dub it.
All right, so all right, I got to figure it out. You're so pissed off at these guys. You write Hatred of a Minute.
Well, actually,
and about
what sort of did happen. I was pretty hurt that I was backstabbed, I guess, for lack of a better term, and I drove around one night, and it was around the holidays, and the thought that kept crossing through my head was the moment from It's a Wonderful Life, where George Bailey's at the bar and he's depressed, he's sad, he's on the brink of suicide. And he prays. He's at the bar and he says, "I'm at the end of my rope." And I said to myself, because I was in that headspace, I said, "I'm at the end of my rope." And I said, "End of my rope limited partnership." That's what I'm going to call my partnership, because I'm going solo. And I just kind of walked away from Southern Hospitality, and I called Bruce the next day and I said, we used to call it Soho. I said, "Soho ain't happening. I'm going to write something new." And I called Gunnar, and I said, "My so-called partners and I have gone our separate ways. I'm writing something new, and I'm writing something specifically for you in the movie." And so Hatred was based on a Super 8 short script. I was going to make a Super 8 short, 14-page short script, and I took that script and I unfolded into Hatred of a Minute.
Wow. And then what did Gunnar think when he read that script?
Well, this was the really cool part. I had given him, I believe Bruce lent me money to get an LOI, which for those who don't know is a letter of intent for Gunnar to be in the movie. So I paid him, I think, $500 for a letter that said, if the schedule's right, if the timing's right, I am more than happy to be an actor in Southern Hospitality. And I think Gunnar felt for me, because I called him and I said, that project's dead. And I'm writing something specifically for you. And he said, "Send me the script when you're done." So about a month and a half, 2 months later, I finished. I sent it to Bruce. I sent it to Gunnar. Bruce thought it was cool. Sent it to Gunnar. Gunnar said he had received it and that he was going to read it over the weekend. The next day, he calls me and goes, check your mailbox in the next week. So I get an envelope in the mail from Gunnar, of official Gunnar Hansen stationery, and it was the same letter of intent. The only thing that had changed was the title of the movie.
Sure.
Oh, cool.
What did he do? White it out?
He actually retyped it.
Oh, okay. On a typewriter.
On a typewriter.
On his 90s.
I still have that. Letter too. So he basically didn't charge me for the new letter of intent.
That's so nice.
So the money carried over, and about 6 months later, we were making the movie.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because, here's two horror icons.
Yeah.
That I totally bamboozled into being involved.
Right.
Yeah, you manifested that.
But they supported you. Like I was thinking, I was just wondering what Bruce said. Like, Bruce seems like a Midwestern guy, like a no bullshit kind of guy.
He is very no nonsense, no bullshit Midwestern.
So it seems like you're like, I'm gonna write another script, and he's like, yeah, fuck those guys,
pretty
do
much.
it. And he probably gained more respect for you, saw that you had what it takes to kind of keep moving forward in this crazy, the film industry.
I as he calls it, the flake test. Apparently, I've every 2 years he'd give me a flake test, which I don't know if it was hidden or if it was just me still pursuing what I wanted. I've always wanted to make movies. I started making Super 8 movies when I was 6 because my grandma and my mom, who I was raised by, we'd go on family vacations. My mom would take the photos. My grandma would take Super 8 movies. So I'd use the leftover film.
Which was what? Cool. Those were like 50 feet spools, right?
50-foot spools, 2.5, 3 minutes tops. but I'd make
20-second whine.
I knew we didn't have to whine.
Did it have to whine?
Come on. We had technology.
Hey,
we had a
come
little
on.
thing called batteries.
Hey, we got we got some.
Oh, I see the Super 8 collection.
Cameras
Those
right
aren't
there.
Super 8 though.
They're
Actually
8. 16. No, those are 8. Tom,
there's 2 Super 8 cameras. There's 3
8?
regular 8.
And then, not to be confused with high 8.
That's video.
Home videos.
SOV as they call it, shot on video.
America's Funniest Home Videos. But Demon Lover Diary looked like it was shot on 8. That was
I think it was shot
part
on
of the
actual VHS.
No, dude, that thing looks scary. I don't think so, man. So wait, what were you gonna? You look like you just took a big question.
I have a lot of questions
breath.
for Hatred of a Minute.
know,
Like
so do I, so do I.
So
All right, go
like
ahead.
creating a serial killer that experiences love and grief and has a full anxiety attack and a serial killer that the audience can kind of empathize with is a really interesting choice, considering an audience can usually go serial killer, bad guy, easy.
Right.
What led you to creating such an empathetic serial killer?
Anti-hero, pretty much. I mean, was it part of it you too? Like, was part of that character? I mean, I know you
A
played
little
him.
bit. A little bit is, but I mean, it's. When I was done writing it and I reread it, I went, oh, I just wrote an Edgar Allan Poe movie that Roger Corman would make with Vincent Price.
Mm-hmm.
I from all of that old horror that I watched, it kind of came out of me as trying to do something a little different with it.
Mm-hmm.
Hence,
I don't know if I did.
Hence the opening poem and
Right.
the title.
Right.
What's the name of the poem?
Two.
Two.
T-O.
T.O.
dash.
But it has the expression hatred of a minute.
I heed not that my earthly lot hath little of earth in it, and that years of love have been forgot in the hatred of a minute.
There it is.
Bam.
Goosebumps. Okay.
Put that in your pipe and smoke
But
it.
still, why create, like, what made you want to create a character that is so originally evil, and yet you wanted the audience to sympathize with them?
Because I'm sad.
Aww.
No,
I want to play a bad guy and a good guy.
yeah. Obviously, subconsciously, I wrote when I was done with the script. I was like, I'm obviously trying to emulate something that I used to love watching.
Mm-hmm.
Those tragic monsters that Vincent Price played, or the Universal monsters. I'm a romantic at heart, so there had to be a love story in there somewhere. And if it was a really twisted love story, that gives me goth points on my goth kid card.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the fact that I didn't want to make a slasher movie.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want the movie to be too violent. As weird as this sounds, I didn't want it to be too violent. I wanted it to be a little bit head trippy.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's the multiple levels of hallucinations and flashbacks and
Those
reality
montage scenes, I'm like, whew, overwhelmed.
Really,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
And the ghost, like you gave the character a reason that we empathize with. Making it empathetic is what makes us kind of like side with characters like that.
Sure.
And I noticed earlier you said you were raised by your mom and your grandmother. So
And I was never abused. That's the weird thing.
Well,
everyone thinks I was abused as a kid.
that was kind of my next question. But your he plays a stepfather,
Right.
an abusive stepfather.
Right.
But I was wondering, because you said your father wasn't in the picture, if it
No.
was.
I didn't have an abusive stepfather either. My mom didn't date a lot of the years I was growing up. She just focused on raising
but
me.
was any of it having to do with lack of having a father?
I think so. I think there's some abandonment issue stuff in there. I think because my father, my biological father, was not present in my life, just that archetype, the father figure, didn't mean anything to me. They were assholes.
Yeah, and in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he's like the biggest asshole.
Yeah.
And in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there are only father figures.
Well,
right.
But if you think about it, Leatherface is the mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At times.
He's
Yeah,
providing
yeah,
the
yeah,
food
yeah.
and the food.
Yeah.
But that's why, I mean, before I met you and talked with you, I was very much like creating the idea in my head of like, okay, he saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre, really wanted to dig more into the character of Leatherface and like the idea of, you know, feeling sorry for this serial killer because he comes from this abusive, horrible family situation.
When the first time I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, my mom was sitting with me and she was like, "Why are you watching this? This is disgusting." I'm like, "How is it disgusting? There's no blood in this movie. There's very little blood in that movie."
You picked up on that?
That's true.
Right away?
Because
a lot of people don't pick up on that.
You know, I picked up on that right away, and I picked up the fact that Leatherface was the abused.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know if it seeped into hatred of a minute. It might have. I don't know. That's actually interesting. But I did notice that Texas Chainsaw Massacre has a lot of humor in it. A lot of very subtle, weird humor in it.
Especially the dinner scene.
Yeah. And
I love when they're trying to make the grandfather hit her over the head, and he's like, he just keeps dropping it in the bucket.
So
Get her,
great.
Grandpa.
Yeah. Decrepit that he has no strength.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean your company. Can't think of the name right now.
Dark Art Entertainment.
Yes, thank you. Dark Art Entertainment. I have it written down, but I'm
That's
trying
on ADHD.
I'm trying to. Yeah, it's the ADHD. So Dark Art Entertainment, the Jack in the Box and Hatred of a Minute. What's going on, dude? What's going on?
I always thought Jack in the Boxes were weird, but if you think about it, it symbolizes what happens to my character. It's the wind up and then the explosion. That sounded kind of dirty, but the wind up and the.
It's just awful.
Is this distracting?
It's just always terrifying.
It doesn't scare me at all.
You're like,
Jillian,
I find comfort in it,
finish this?
actually.
The only yeah, that's right. The only thing that scared me about that Jack in the Box.
No, it goes on for a long time.
Not when you just did it.
No, I didn't.
That's awesome.
All right.
That's the best.
So nothing happened with you in a Jack in the Box. Come on, bro.
No, I
Don't lie
always
to me.
thought they
Don't
were
lie to
creepy. The only things that's scary about that Jack in the Box was the price at the time.
Which was
$50.
And you bought this in the 50s.
No, that's an antique.
No, it is an antique.
But I bought that, or actually, my props person bought that at a
Gags and Games.
At an antique store somewhere in Michigan. It was $50, and at that point, I was like, "We only have X amount of dollars to make this movie."
And then you moved over to Mutant Swinger from Mars. Bit of a 180 from Hatred of a Minute.
I have foreseen aliens, unfriendly aliens, sneaking onto our planet undetected. A war of the worlds is about to start on this planet, a fight to the death. Say, what gives, baby? You wound up like a cheap watch. Oh, come on, bubby.
That movie was always in my head somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
but it really started with when I wasn't directing and producing stuff of my own. I worked as an art director for a production designer who had a studio in Farmington Hills, Michigan, not too far from me. So I'd help build sets for like Sprite commercials and the Michigan Lottery, and
cool.
We'd do weird installations. We made a children's section in the Farmington Library where we built fake trees.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
That was my favorite. That's always, I mean, that still to this day is my favorite area of Barnes & Noble. I will still grab a book and go over to the children's section.
I'm not allowed in there anymore. I've been banned.
Like
your
I
Venmo.
look like an aunt or a babysitter looking for a gift for my kid. You
I look
like a predator.
Yeah.
You're just from hanging out too much, reading books?
Around children?
Look at me.
Look at him.
I wasn't really banned from the. Well, it probably was.
From just certain from the children's books.
Yeah, I can't be near
section?
a grade school.
Grade school through.
No, but like
we're joking.
Yes, I am. I'm
is
completely
he?
fine.
Are you?
No, we Pat
I
Berry.
would let you around my kids, Michael.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course. I have none, but
I fooled her.
Let you around your hypothetical children. You can watch them.
Mm-hmm.
So like one of the, and it was gig work. It was freelance work. So I didn't work there all the time, but I worked for my buddy Rolf a lot, who owned this At the time, it was called Illuminations. It became Milestone Creative.
Cool.
But like our friend Pat Barry took a Furby and ripped it apart and turned it into an owl that we put in one of these trees.
No.
So it would hoot when it was motion censored. You're scared of fake owls?
I hate that. I hate Furbies. I'm
Well,
scared of Furbies.
it didn't look like a Furby anymore. We ripped it apart.
Owls are scary.
and made it.
Yeah.
Owls are unique. They are creepy.
I love an owl.
But
Owls don't creep me
but
out.
Furbies and
Owls
owls
will
are
kill
wise.
you. Owls will kill you.
Owls will kill you. Furbies won't.
Yeah, but yeah.
Furbies will
Kill
tell
you
your
with
deep,
love.
Furbies will tell your deep dark secrets.
Furbies will kill you in your dreams.
That's true. But yeah, so I was working there, and we had old props and things. And one day he's like, "We got to clean up. We got to get rid of some stuff." So we started inventorying the warehouse studio, and I noticed a lot of this weird science fiction stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done all sorts of commercials and things like that, but and movies. But I was curious about the science fiction accoutrement. I've used that twice today.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
going to
you
say,
have.
spell it.
Accoutrement. I'm not.
There's probably an X in there, right?
A
I love
silent.
how no one's checking.
A silent Q.
I will check. I'll
Sure.
I'll spell
I
it.
believe
We'll
it.
spell it in post.
Accoutrement. I don't know how to spell French.
EUX is what it ends with.
Accoutrements. But no, there's all this science fiction stuff. So Rolf goes, the guys who used to own this place that he bought it from did all of the special effects for a movie called Flesh Gordon Meets the Cosmic Cheerleaders, which was a sequel to Flesh Gordon, which was a very, very famous porno film
Yep.
that was made with a bunch of special effects. And the movie was so well received in the adult film world, they cut it down to an R rating and they released it as an R-rated movie. So the sequel was just an R-rated sex
So
comedy.
like softcore.
There's no even simulated sex in either versions. It's
Okay.
There's sexy time,
So you're
topless
like,
and that.
Sexual
I'm gonna
situation.
make a sci-fi film.
I from looking around, I went, I could make a sci-fi movie. We could make a cool 50s sci-fi spoof out of all this stuff. And that's
Wow.
what we did. I pitched it
That's
to Rolf.
funny.
I was like, I got film in my freezer.
Yeah.
There's all
Short
of this
ends.
stuff.
Short ends.
Totally. There's all this stuff laying around. Let's make
Yeah.
a 50s sci-fi spoof. 'Cause
Very Orson Welles, obviously.
Orson
Very
Welles
Plan
meets
9.
Orson
Yeah.
Welles
Ed Wood.
meets Ed Wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wrote that script in 3 days.
Nice.
That's great. What
It was
made
just in my
you
head, and I went.
Talk about the choice to keep the whole frame in an old television.
That wasn't originally my choice.
Oh, whose was it?
When the movie finally came out, because I shot that movie in late '97, early '98. Aside from the fact that Jack White, it's his acting debut,
Right.
Yeah.
no one cared.
Yeah.
We had some bites. We had some interest as far as distribution was concerned back in the day. Matter of fact, after we shot it, because we shot very little film,
Yeah.
but we did shoot the whole thing on film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 2018, I submitted it to a film festival called Hollywood Horror Fest. I was a day late, past the deadline.
Been there.
Yeah. And Miles Flanagan, to his credit, who runs the festival, very nice guy, said, we really like your film, but there's just no room for it. But maybe try next year. And I was like, great, man. I appreciate you considering it, even though it was late. He didn't charge me to submit it.
That's nice.
Which was nice. And I forgot about it the following year. And in 2020, as this pandemic is happening, I get an email. Actually, it was January of 2020, just before the pandemic started. I get an email from Miles saying, me and my partner have started a distribution company. We remembered your movie. We'd love to distribute it for streaming. And they were going to do, at one point, they were going to do physical as well. They're like...
So they were aggregates. They were doing like the aggregate
Pretty
thing?
much.
Like okay, for streaming.
Right. They wanted... we shot it in 1:3:1, which is old TV aspect ratio. And that's what they wanted. They didn't want that. They wanted 16:9.
So you had to fill the frame.
Well, originally my idea was going to be a curtain opens up like a movie theater, and the curtain stayed on the side where the black bars were.
Sure.
Nadav Street, who was Miles' partner, came up with the TV frame, which I thought worked really well.
Yeah.
And appeased the
ratio.
Yeah, the aspect ratio haters.
Yeah. Wow.
Because I like that 1:3:1 look.
Yeah, no, it was cool. I mean, it's very campy, silly, goofy time. It was fun.
I wanted to make a midnight movie.
It's got Mystery Science Theater. It's a little Mystery Science Theater. You know, you put some of those, the little robot and everything right in the
It's absolutely that
foreground.
Wow, I love that. Well, before we finish up, I wanted to touch on the film that Anchor Bay is currently in post, that Josh is editing now, and that is Dinner with Leatherface.
Why isn't he editing right now?
Hey, the same reason you're not editing Bruce Campbell's movie right now.
Shut up. We're not talking about that.
Yeah.
We're talking about
Bruce,
you.
Hey, Bruce, just so you know, if you watch this, he's been here. He's been helping me with his movie, and he hasn't touched your movie. He said he's like so far behind.
This got to be cut out.
Hey, Bruce, hey, first of all, isn't he supposed to? I thought he was going to be on the show. Will he be on the show, Bruce?
Maybe.
Come down.
Well, let's
come down and see us.
Let's talk about Dinner with Leatherface.
Michael. Okay, so I'm editing his Dinner with Leatherface documentary, which
tell the audience what it is.
I was trying to figure out if he's supposed to tell him or if I'm supposed
Someone
to
tell the freaking audience what Dinner with Leatherface is.
Yeah, I think he should tell, and then I'll fill in the gaps.
Dinner with Leatherface is a documentary about Gunnar Hansen. Gunnar Hansen, the original Leatherface. Gunnar Hansen, the scholar, the poet, and I'm not even joking about that. He's a poet, and he knew it. Filmmaker, documentarian filmmaker, actor in a lot of B and lower grade movies. A gentle giant, a friend, a colleague, a mentor, just an all-around beautiful human being. And I used to joke, because when Gunnar would come into town, Gunnar worked on a movie called Mosquito just before he did Hatred of a Minute. He was coming to Michigan a lot, doing pickups and things like that for the movie Mosquito, directed by Gary Jones, whom I know.
The effects guy that you
I poached 4 or 5 actors from Mosquito for Hatred of a Minute.
Nice.
But when Gunnar would come into town, I would pick him up from the airport. We'd have dinner and hang out, drink.
Is that where you got Dinner with Leatherface?
Sort of. It's actually based on a song by my friend Creepy Rick Mills' band, the 3D Invisibles, which I played for Gunnar the first time I picked him up at the airport. And it was apropos because Dinner with Leatherface, I used to have Dinner with Leatherface every time he came into town. And I slowly came to find out that everyone kind of had a Dinner with Leatherface story, because Gunnar liked to break bread and have drinks and talk and
he
philosophize.
Passed in 2015?
He passed in 2015, and when I found out, I'd spent the day putting together an ad slick for Hatred of a Minute, because a friend of mine was going to AFM. The rights had reverted back to me. He was going to see if he could help me re-release the movie, get it re-released. And so I'd spent the day with Gunnar, looking through photos and putting together a cool little ad slick that he was obviously had to be on and involved with, because he was the star. He was our name.
Right.
And I took the ad slicks up to the local watering hole to Tiki No to pass on to him. And I had a drink with him, and he left. And I got another drink, and I got a text from my friend Joyce, who said, "I'm sorry about your loss." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Oh, you didn't hear. Gunnar passed away." So I had actually spent the day. You talk about serendipitous. Jillian and I have stories like that through this whole.
Oh my
it
God,
still happens to this. Still happens to this day. We had a supernatural experience during one of the interview sessions with Gunnar.
Really?
Like Gunnar showed up. It was cool.
Talk about it.
We were interviewing this guy Chase Anderson, who works directdirectly with the people that own the movie, and to his credit, he has a really cool traveling Texas Chainsaw Massacre museum that you see at a lot of conventions. He does conventions all over the world, and Midsummer Scream, and he's there, always there, because he lives in Long Beach. But we were interviewing him, and the light flickered above Chase, his personal home chandelier light. It flickered, and it felt like, and I don't know if you people believe in ghosts. I do. I've seen a lot of weird shit.
I do.
It was like something flew at me right in my face, but there was nothing there. But there was something there. And I suddenly got very warm, and I started to smile. Kind of an uncontrollable smile. Basically, so for lack of a better term, Gunner's ghost bum rushed me.
Yeah.
My friend Lowell, who also helped me produce Dinner with Leatherface, he was standing up. He said all the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Like,
oh,
he sort of felt it. Yeah. So the energy in the room changed.
Why do you think it was that specific interview?
I don't know.
Because you've had a lot. There were a lot of people interviewed. 60,
yeah,
70 people.
I don't know. I've had a couple of experiences with Gunnar. Never an interview, but I've had a couple of experiences with Gunnar. I think it always felt like Gunnar.
Yeah,
that were directly.
You guys built a bond, and you're
yeah,
not clairvoyant, but you're open. Together. Your energy's open to it.
Right.
Well, I mean, in a weird way, I did kind of spend a day with Gunnar before he passed. And I never knew he was sick. And this is the really kind of sad part that I'll probably end up talking about in the documentary because it's definitely needed, I think.
Yeah, we still have to do your interview.
We do.
Ironically,
we do, but before the September 11th, because I leave for 3 weeks.
Oh.
So we should do it this next coming week. Okay. Gunnar and I, the last time I talked to Gunnar, he was pissed at me.
Why?
Because I was supposed to pick him up. He wrote the book Chainsaw Confidential, and he was having a signing in Burbank at Dark Delicacies. And I fucked up on the time to pick him up because we were going to go have dinner. And he called me. I was on my way over. I was like, I feel like I was running a few minutes late. He called me. He said, "Where the fuck are you?" And I said, "I'm on my way." He's like, "Oh, well, the signing's over." I thought it was till 5. It was only till 4.
Oh.
Or something like that. I was an hour off. And I was like, "Well, I can be there in a few minutes." And he was like, "Don't bother. I made other plans." And that was the last time I actually talked to Gunnar Hansen. And it still kind of hurts a little, but the encounters, for lack of a better term, the encounters I had that I feel that were Gunnar, I think he's forgiven me.
Do you think that's no closure on your part? Like no closure from being is that the last thing you guys talked about was, I mean, the last time you talked, it was like, he was mad at you, an argument, not an argument.
I felt terrible.
Yeah, of course.
Because I didn't realize, I fucked up on the time. It could happen to anyone.
Yeah.
But I feel like the closure's happened.
Okay.
I've had a few experiences. That last one being interviewing Chase, where I didn't. Again, I felt warm and I started to kind of giggle.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop smiling because it was like such a strange moment.
Yeah.
But yet, how do you explain this to people?
Yeah.
I saw something, but I saw nothing.
Oh.
I felt it. It was there. But I could still see it. But nothing was there.
But when you tell the story to people, we feel it.
Yeah.
Because we know you felt it. Or whatever it was. Whatever experience you had because of your relationship with them.
Right.
And even more so because of maybe the last time you guys talked.
Yeah.
So I am actually really honored to be editing this documentary because my favorite movies...
As you should be.
And I am. And because my favorite horror movie, and maybe one of my favorite movies in general, because... Texas Chainsaw Massacre is recognized as not only a horror movie, but it's recognized as a great piece of cinema. I mean, it's just recognized
and
as
satire.
And satire.
Yeah.
And just so you know, we're about halfway through, and I'm editing it with Julia David. She's like kind of like the assistant editor and stuff, and kind of cutting her teeth on this.
This is him telling you it's not going to be done in time.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, we're supposed to be done with the first cut in like by the end of this month. So
by the end of the day.
By the end of maybe by the end.
Exclusive.
It
That's
comes
not
out.
happening.
Yeah, I don't even know when is this episode airing. Like, but it's already done. It should be already
by
done.
The time
by
this
the
episode
time.
airs,
It's airing now.
It's out. It's airing now.
It aired 4 days ago.
What can audiences expect when they see Dinner with Leatherface? Is it interviews with people who just had experiences with Gunnar, or
colleagues, friends, associates, college roommate,
love?
Very close friend. He lived in Maine.
Oh, cool.
He kept a very private life outside of the horror community, but also embraced both just as much. Like, he loves his horror people. He loves his private time. We're going to see both sides of it. We're going to see Gunnar as the poet he was, as the writer, as the documentarian filmmaker, as the actor of various styles of movies, genres, and a range of budgetary cornucopia of budgetary nonsense.
Love that.
Or lack thereof. We're going to see Gunnar, who he really was, and how much he was loved, and how much he encouraged filmmakers and writers and just anybody. He was one of those guys who backed. I'm getting a little misty-eyed, actually. Promised myself I wouldn't cry.
The first time that I tripped up the ramp and looked up, and it was OMG. I'm fucked.
It's that shocking scene. He jumps out, he hits the guy, slams the door shut. You wondered what was behind that mask.
They blindfolded me, and I really was worked up into a tizzy. And then they yell, action, boom. I go into the kitchen. I see the hook, just to make sure they had two of the grips behind me and pulling me down just as the hammer. And here's this big guy. I'm a munchkin. That was really my first time actually getting to see Gunnar.
He then takes Terry McMahon and throws her back into the freezer. And then Gunnar runs around the house, freaked out and panicked.
He's hitting his head. There's something about just the humanity of him.
He's the monster. He's the bad guy, but he's the human monster too. But he's the monster.
The great thing about him, much like Bruce, Gunnar had my back. Bruce had my back. Has my back. Gunnar has my back. He still has my back.
He still has your back. Those are his visitations.
Yeah, he still has my back. And it's cool because, especially during the time where I was kind of struggling with relationships in this business in the beginning, starting out, Gunnar understood, that people can be mean.
Yeah.
And people can be kind of shitty.
Yeah.
Especially to each other. And just the fact that he was like on my side when things went south with my so-called producing partners and that.
Yeah.
He didn't have to do that. We were friends at that point.
Yeah.
This was before the internet was even a thing. He would call me on the phone on the regular just to see how I was doing. And we'd have 2-3 hour conversations, just shooting the shit. Have you seen any good movies lately? Have you read any good books? What are you working on? How are things going? Because it took a long time to raise money for any movie.
Yeah.
And I had one investor that gave me a little bit of money because originally Hatred of a Minute was going to be a $25,000 movie because that was the thing at the time.
Yeah.
People making, Kevin Smith making Clerks and
full feature,
and El Mariachi and
$7,000
Rodriguez.
$7,000, I think.
Oh my god.
Shoot
before they
before they gave him $150,000
to
fix
color
it.
correct.
But it's so rare to have a mentor like that in this industry.
And he was always there just to shoot the shit with or complain about something, vent, lament. But that was the cool thing. It was like I could say, yeah, Gunnar Hansen called me. Me and Gunnar are pals.
Gotta run. Gunner's calling.
Sometimes we just need a couple an ally, a little push.
He was absolutely an ally, just like Bruce.
Him and Bruce, just a few people, and same goes for up and coming filmmakers that I see or that you see. You know, who the experience is one thing. So like you see up and comers. I'm always trying to encourage people because encouragement like goes a really long way.
Yeah,
like,
I was gonna ask if you could pass along your favorite piece of Gunnar advice to a young filmmaker now. What would that be?
Don't listen to other people. Just do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
Move forward in your own way, in your own pace. Which is kind of why I said, you know what, fuck this. I'm gonna write something else.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna start from scratch. I don't need anyone else. I shouldn't say that. I didn't have anyone else. I had them. I had Bruce. I had Gunnar. And it was scary because I never set out to be a producer per se. It was by default because
you had to.
I had to. And same thing with editing. Like I never set out to be an editor. I made a joke to Bruce about editing Hatred of a Minute. I would do it like Robert Rodriguez did. And he said, that's a great idea. This was after several months of editing. I moved from Detroit to LA for like 3-4 months and stayed with Bruce and his lovely wife, Ida. And we were running out of money. We cut a trailer, and I went home with my tail between my legs. And he called me up and was like, well, how are we going to finish this movie? And that joke caused him to book the editing system and the assistant editor, who became the editor on this movie, on Hatred of a Minute, flew them out to Detroit, and I sat with, his name's Paul Hart. I sat with Paul for a week as he showed me how to edit digitally.
Wow.
And then I had the system for 9 weeks.
Wow.
So I was I don't want to say forced. I was gifted the ability to edit, which has saved my ass.
Yeah.
To this day, it's saving my ass.
That's the number one thing, man. Directors and editing, you got it.
They're hand in hand.
I any director that I know that I've worked with that doesn't know how to edit, they constantly have to do reshoots. And they're constantly waiting around for other people to edit their movies, and they're not paying them, so they're waiting forever, so their movies never get finished.
Right.
And they don't pay attention to continuity.
Yeah, and they don't pay attention, and they don't really they don't know how the movie's gonna look, so they have to keep going and reshooting. So it saves you money in the end, and also
it does.
And also you get to cut movies like Bruce's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. Like I said, it saved my ass plenty of times.
Make some money in the process.
Yeah. And like I just did a movie last year, $9,000.
A movie last
length.
year?
Yeah.
9,000? That's
All in.
possible?
I did one before that for 2,400.
Yeah.
That's possible?
Of course.
You can do it.
You can do it.
Okay, challenge accepted. I'm kidding.
No, you can do it. I get motivated by Mike's like his.
If this idiot can do it,
I'm gonna be calling you up and asking some questions.
He'll do it.
I am one of those people that will give you all of the knowledge you need or don't need or don't want.
Yeah.
Why don't you write a book?
I've been working on 2 books. One's a bunch of stories and old writing I did when I was younger, actually high school and college. It's called Teen Angst.
Cool.
2 books I'm slowly working on that I have been for a while, partially because I have all these notebooks and I just want to get rid of some shit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, might as well publish a book, and then I'll have a book and it'll be on a shelf and not some old banged up spiral notebook. The other one is about do-it-yourself filmmaking and low-budget filmmaking and no-budget filmmaking with a little bit of Hollywood anecdotes, being in this industry, anecdotes, and some cookbook tips.
You can make that a textbook for
what's
colleges,
the title going to be?
Because I know so many universities that need that. Like, no one knows that. All these universities and film programs teach these kids how to make these extravagant movies because the universities have all this gear and equipment just at your disposal, and then they get out in the real world and they don't have daddy's wallet to help pay for their passion project, and then the dream dies because they have no idea how to do something for less than like $15K.
Yeah.
So I will read your book.
We'll
Please
read
finish
your book.
it.
What's the title going to be?
The title, I'm working on the title, but I think it's going to be called Adventures of a Blue-Collar Filmmaker.
Nice.
Love. Wow.
Nice.
Well,
because that's what I am. I'm from Detroit. I feel like I work very hard.
You do.
You do.
And I feel like that's a pretty spot on.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
Title.
Well,
All right,
Michael, thank you so much for joining us and being our first guest. This was
congratulations.
So much fun, and I'm so excited to see Dinner with Leatherface.
Thank you. Me too.
What an honor.
Yeah, you got to finish that.
How did we do? This was your first episode, but it was our first episode. We
You
all
guys did great.
Well,
I think
not
we all
you.
had
You
fun.
know what you do.
We all had fun.
Oh yeah, you guys were great.
Cool.
Oh, well, thank you
guys are
so
great.
much for coming, and we hope to have you back on
Oh,
once Dinner with Leatherface is out, and we can talk about it.
When's the release date?
October
2024.
Love.
Okay.
Wait,
what? I'm just kidding. Okay, October. Like, yeah.
I'm glad
somewhere around there.
I'm glad I was on this inaugural podcast, and I like to talk about myself and my projects.
And I like to ask questions.
Perfect. Let's do this.
This
tomorrow.
was beautiful.
Yeah. Let's do it tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Mike.
All right. So, do we have an outro yet?
That was it.
Oh,
You
it'll be
say
like some music.
You say thank you so much.
Thanks. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, that's gonna edit.
All right.
well.
And cut.
Yeah,